You know what's funny? The people who seem to have it all together, the ones with the perfect Instagram feeds, the spotless homes, the flawless presentations at work, they're often the ones suffering the most. And I'm not talking about suffering from success. I'm talking about a kind of quiet desperation that nobody sees because, well, perfection doesn't allow for cracks. But here's what most people don't realize. That relentless drive for perfection, that voice in your head that says nothing you do is ever quite good enough, it didn't start with you. It started a long time ago, probably before you even have clear memories. And today, we're going to trace that thread back to where it all began, because understanding the childhood wound behind your perfectionism might be the first step to finally setting yourself free. Let me ask you something. When you were a kid, what happened when you brought home a report card? Think about it for a second. Really think about it. Did your parents celebrate your achievements? Or did they immediately point to the one B among all those A's? Did they ask you why you didn't get 100%? Did they compare you to your sibling or the neighbor's kid? Or maybe, and this is just as damaging, did they not react at all? No celebration, no acknowledgement, just a kind of expectation that, of course, you did well, because anything less would be unacceptable? These moments seem small at the time. Just a comment here, a raised eyebrow there. But for a child's developing brain, these moments are everything. They're the building blocks of how we come to understand our worth in the world. And for many perfectionists, what got built was a very specific and very painful equation. Your worth equals your performance. Not your worth plus your performance. Not your worth regardless of your performance. Your worth equals your performance. Which means if you're not performing perfectly, you're not worthy. And that, right there, is the wound. Now, I want to be clear about something before we go any further. When we talk about childhood wounds, we're not necessarily talking about abuse or neglect in the traditional sense. We're not always talking about parents who were cruel or intentionally harmful. In fact, many perfectionists come from families where the parents were educated, successful, well-meaning people who genuinely wanted the best for their children. But wanting the best for your child and giving them what they actually need are two very different things. And sometimes, the wound comes not from what was done to us, but from what wasn't given to us. The unconditional acceptance. The permission to fail. The message that we were enough, just as we were, mistakes and all. So what does this wound look like in childhood? Let me paint you a few pictures. Picture a little girl, maybe 7 years old, who spends hours on her homework every night, erasing and rewriting the same sentence over and over because her handwriting isn't perfect enough. Her mom keeps telling her it's fine, time for bed, but she can't stop. She's crying now, frustrated, exhausted, but she keeps going because something inside her says that if it's not perfect, something terrible will happen. She can't name what that terrible thing is, but she feels it. That's the wound. Or picture a boy, 10 years old, who's just struck out in Little League. He's walking back to the dugout, and before he even gets there, he's scanning the bleachers for his dad's face. And when he finds it, he sees disappointment. Maybe his dad doesn't even realize his face is showing it. Maybe his dad is just processing the moment, thinking about the game, about strategy. But the boy sees disappointment, and in that split second, something inside him decides, I let him down. I'm not good enough. I have to do better. I have to be perfect. That's the wound. Or maybe it's even more subtle than that. Maybe it's a household where everything always looks perfect. The house is immaculate. Mom and dad never fight in front of the kids. Everyone's always dressed nicely, and the family looks picture perfect to the outside world. But inside that perfection, there's no room for messy emotions. When you're sad, you're told to cheer up. When you're angry, you're told to calm down. When you make a mistake, it's quickly swept under the rug and never discussed. The message you receive, loud and clear, even though nobody actually says it, is that negative emotions and imperfection are not acceptable here. We don't do that in this family, so you learn to hide them. You learn to perform perfection, even when inside you're falling apart. That's the wound, too. Here's what happens in the brain of a child who's developing this wound. Children are incredibly egocentric, not in a selfish way, but in a developmental way. They believe that everything that happens around them is somehow about them or caused by them. So when a parent is stressed, angry, distant, or disappointed, the child doesn't think, "Oh, mom had a hard day at work," or "Dad's worried about money." The child thinks, "I did something wrong. I'm not good enough. What can I do to make them happy? What can I do to earn their love?" And if that child discovers that achievement gets positive attention, that good grades or athletic success or artistic talent makes mom smile or makes dad proud, well, that child is going to pursue achievement with everything they've got. Because to that child, achievement isn't about personal growth or learning or fun. Achievement is about survival. It's about securing the love and approval they need to feel safe in the world. Now fast forward 20 or 30 years. That child is now an adult. Maybe they're successful by conventional standards. Good job, nice apartment, impressive resume. But inside, they're still running on that same operating system that got installed in childhood. They're still trying to earn love and approval through perfect performance. Except now there's no report card to bring home, no little league game to win. Now it's about the perfect presentation at work, the perfect body at the gym, the perfect relationship, the perfect vacation photos, the perfect everything. And it's exhausting. Because here's the thing about perfectionism. It's not actually about being perfect. That's what people misunderstand. Perfectionism is not about high standards, attention to detail, or wanting to do your best. Those are healthy traits. Perfectionism is the belief that if you're perfect, you can avoid pain. You can avoid criticism, rejection, shame, and failure. You can finally earn the unconditional love that you should have received freely as a child, but didn't. Or at least, you didn't receive it in a way that your nervous system could actually register and believe. And that's why perfectionism is so insidious. Because it promises something it can never deliver. It says, just be a little bit better, achieve a little bit more, control a little bit more, and then you'll finally be safe. You'll finally be worthy. You'll finally be enough. But that finish line keeps moving. It has to keep moving because the wound isn't healed by achievement. The wound is healed by something entirely different, something that perfectionism actively prevents you from receiving. Let me tell you about the different types of childhood wounds that create perfectionism, because not all perfectionism looks the same, and not all of it comes from the same place. There's conditional love perfectionism, which is what we've been mostly talking about so far. This is where love and approval were explicitly or implicitly tied to achievement and good behavior. You were praised when you succeeded and criticized or ignored when you failed. You learned that love had conditions, and you've been trying to meet those conditions ever since. Then there's chaos perfectionism. This develops in households where there was instability, unpredictability, maybe addiction or mental illness or financial stress. In these environments, the child learns that if they can just control enough, be good enough, achieve enough, maybe they can stabilize the chaos around them. Maybe if I get straight A's, dad will stop drinking. Maybe if I'm perfectly behaved, mom will stop being so anxious. Obviously, none of that actually works because a child can't fix adult problems. But the pattern gets set. Control and perfection are safety. There's also comparison perfectionism, where the wound comes from constantly being compared to siblings, peers, or some idealized standard. You were always coming up short in someone's eyes. Your sister was smarter, your classmate was more athletic, and the neighbor's kid was more talented. You internalized the message that you were in a competition you were losing, and you've been trying to win ever since. And then there's invisible child perfectionism. This is particularly painful. This is where the wound comes, not from criticism, but from neglect or emotional absence. Maybe your parents were physically present, but emotionally unavailable. Maybe they were dealing with their own trauma or depression, or just checked out. You learned that the only way to get any attention, any acknowledgement of your existence, was to achieve something noteworthy. So you became exceptional, not because you wanted to, but because it was the only way to be seen. Here's what all of these have in common. They taught you that your inherent worth, Your worthiness of love and belonging just for existing, just for being you, wasn't enough. You had to earn it. You had to prove it. And you've been trying to prove it ever since. Now let me tell you what happens to perfectionists as adults, because this is where the wound really shows its impact. Perfectionists are often high achievers, yes, but they're also some of the most anxious, stressed, and secretly miserable people you'll meet. Because perfectionism and anxiety are best friends. They feed each other constantly. Think about it. If your worth is tied to your performance, and if anything less than perfect is unacceptable, then every task, every interaction, every moment becomes high stakes. Sending an email at work isn't just communication, it's a test of your worth. Going to the gym isn't just exercise, it's proof that you're disciplined and valuable. Having a conversation with a friend isn't just a connection, it's a performance that you can succeed or fail at. Everything becomes a referendum on whether you're good enough. And the anxiety that comes with that is enormous. Because you can't actually control everything. You can't make every email perfect. You can't make your body look exactly how you want it to look. You can't control how other people perceive you. But perfectionism demands that you try. And when you inevitably fall short, the anxiety spikes and the shame sets in. And then you double down on the perfectionism, thinking that if you just try harder, control more, achieve more, you'll finally escape the anxiety. But you won't, because the perfectionism is creating the anxiety in the first place. Perfectionists also struggle enormously with decision-making and procrastination. This surprises people because they think perfectionists are these super decisive, action-oriented people. But actually, many perfectionists are paralyzed by the fear of making the wrong choice. Because if there's a right choice and a wrong choice, and your worth depends on making the right choice, then making any choice becomes terrifying. So you research endlessly, you make pro and con lists, you ask everyone's opinion, you second-guess yourself constantly. Or you just avoid making the decision altogether through procrastination, because if you don't decide, you can't fail. And relationships. Relationships are tough for perfectionists. Because intimacy requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires showing people your imperfections, your mistakes, your messy human reality. But if your entire identity is built on being perfect, if your worth depends on never showing weakness or failure, then true intimacy becomes impossible. You're always performing, always managing how you're perceived, always terrified that if someone sees the real you, the imperfect you, they'll reject you. So perfectionists often end up in one of two relationship patterns. Either they choose partners who are critical and demanding, unconsciously recreating the childhood dynamic where love had to be earned, or they choose partners who are overly accommodating and never challenge them, which feels safe but ultimately unfulfilling because there's no real intimacy happening. They're being loved for the perfect persona they present, not for who they actually are. Here's something else that happens to adult perfectionists that nobody talks about. They lose touch with what they actually want. Think about it. If you've spent your entire life trying to meet other people's standards, trying to earn approval, trying to be what you think you should be, when do you ever stop and ask yourself what you actually want? What brings you joy? Not what brings you achievement or approval, but actual joy. What are you curious about? What would you do if failure weren't a possibility? Most perfectionists have no idea how to answer these questions because they've never been allowed to ask them. Their entire orientation is external. What will make other people happy? What will make me look successful? What's the impressive thing to do? Their internal compass, their sense of authentic desire and genuine preference, got shut down a long time ago because it wasn't safe or relevant. So now we've identified the wound, and we've seen how it plays out in adulthood. The question is, what do we do about it? How do we heal this? And I'm going to tell you right now, the answer is going to feel counterintuitive and probably uncomfortable, because healing perfectionism requires doing the exact opposite of what perfectionism tells you to do. The healing doesn't come from finally achieving enough or being perfect enough. The healing comes from learning to be imperfect and discovering that you're still worthy, you're still lovable, you're still enough. The healing comes from reparenting yourself, from giving yourself now what you didn't get then. Unconditional acceptance. Permission to fail. The message that you are inherently worthy, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. This means you have to start practicing imperfection intentionally. And I mean really practicing it. Sending the email with a typo and not apologizing. Posting the photo where you don't look perfect. Saying I don't know in a meeting. Trying something you're bad at just because it's fun. Failing at something and not beating yourself up about it. These sound like small things, but for a perfectionist, they're revolutionary acts. Every time you practice imperfection and survive it, every time you show someone your messy humanity and they don't reject you, you're rewriting that childhood script. You're teaching your nervous system something it never learned back then, that you can be imperfect and still be safe, still be loved, still be worthy. You also need to start separating your worth from your performance. This is hard because it's been tangled up for so long. But you need to practice saying things like, I am worthy, whether this project succeeds or fails. My value as a human being is not determined by my productivity today. I am enough, even when I make mistakes. At first, these statements will feel like lies. Your perfectionist brain will reject them completely. That's okay. Say them anyway, over and over. Let them start to create new neural pathways. Another crucial piece is learning to recognize and challenge your inner critic. That voice that says you're not good enough. You should have done better. What's wrong with you? Everyone else has it together. You're falling behind. That voice sounds like you, and you might think it's helping you by keeping you motivated or holding you to high standards. But it's not. That voice is the internalized voice of whoever wounded you in childhood. It's your parents' criticism, or their anxiety, or their impossibly high standards, or their emotional absence. It's not you. It's the wound. And you can start to talk back to it. You can say, thank you for trying to protect me, but I don't need perfectionism to keep me safe anymore. You can say, I hear you, but I'm going to make a different choice. You can say, that's not actually true. I am doing my best, and that is enough. This isn't toxic positivity or pretending everything is fine. This is actively choosing to treat yourself with the compassion and acceptance you deserved all along. You might also need to grieve. This is the part nobody tells you about healing childhood wounds. You need to grieve what you didn't get. The unconditional love. The safe space to fail. The permission to just be a kid and not have to earn your place in the family or in the world. That grief is real, and it's painful, and you can't skip over it. You have to feel it, acknowledge it, honor it. You deserve better. You deserve to be loved just for being you. And it's not fair that you didn't get that. Acknowledging that unfairness, feeling that pain, is part of the healing process. And here's something beautiful that starts to happen when you do this work. You start to discover who you actually are underneath all the perfectionism. You start to reconnect with parts of yourself that got buried a long time ago. Your creativity, your playfulness, your authentic desires and preferences. You start to do things because you want to, not because you should. You start to choose relationships that feel nourishing rather than relationships where you have to perform. You start to experience moments of genuine peace, not the conditional peace of I can relax because I achieved something today, but the deeper peace of I am okay exactly as I am right now. This doesn't mean you stop having standards or caring about quality or wanting to grow and improve. It means you do those things from a place of self-compassion and genuine interest rather than from fear and shame. It means you become someone who strives for excellence when it matters to you, but who can also let go, make mistakes, be messy, be human, and still sleep peacefully at night. I want to talk for a moment about what this healing looks like in practical terms, because I know some of you are listening to this thinking, okay, this all makes sense, but how do I actually do it? Where do I start? Start small, really small. Pick one area of your life where the stakes feel relatively low and practice imperfection there. Maybe it's your morning routine. Maybe you're someone who has a very rigid, optimized morning routine, and any deviation from it makes you anxious. Try changing it up. Sleep in one day. Skip the workout. Have dessert for breakfast. See what happens. Notice the anxiety that comes up and notice that you survive it. Or maybe it's social media. If you're someone who carefully curates every post, every photo, every caption, try posting something unpolished. A messy room in the background. No filter. A caption with a typo that you leave there on purpose. See what happens. Notice that the world doesn't end. Notice that people probably don't even notice or care as much as you thought they would. Or try it with a low-stakes task at work. Send an email that's good enough, but not perfect. Turn in a project that meets the requirements, but isn't your absolute best work. I know this feels wrong. I know it goes against everything your perfectionist brain is telling you. Do it anyway. And then pay attention to what actually happens versus what you feared would happen. The gap between those two things, between the catastrophic outcome you imagined and the usually totally fine actual outcome, that gap is where the healing happens. Because every time you discover that imperfection doesn't lead to disaster, you're building evidence against the belief system that perfectionism is based on. You can also start to explore where your perfectionism shows up and what it's really protecting you from. Because perfectionism is a defense mechanism. It's armor. And if you can start to understand what you're afraid will happen if you're not perfect, you can address the actual fear instead of just managing the symptoms. Are you afraid of rejection? Where did you learn that you'd be rejected if you weren't perfect? Are you afraid of failure? What does failure mean to you? What do you think it says about you? Are you afraid of disappointing people? Whose disappointment are you really afraid of? Current people in your life or someone from your past? Are you afraid of your own emotions? Is perfectionism keeping you busy enough that you don't have to feel difficult feelings? These are deep questions, and they might be worth exploring with a therapist who understands childhood trauma and attachment wounds. Because sometimes the wound is deep enough that we need professional help to heal it, and there's no shame in that. In fact, seeking help is one of the most anti-perfectionist things you can do because it requires admitting that you don't have it all figured out, that you need support, that you're human. Let me tell you what life on the other side of this healing can look like, because I want you to know that it's possible and it's worth it. On the other side of healing your perfectionism, you wake up in the morning and you're not immediately anxious about everything you have to do. You can enjoy your coffee without mentally running through your to-do list. You can take a day off without guilt. You can try new things without the crushing fear of not being immediately good at them. You can have conversations where you're actually present and listening instead of performing and monitoring how you're being perceived. You can receive constructive feedback without it destroying you, because you understand that feedback about your work is not a judgment of your worth as a person. You can celebrate other people's successes without it triggering your own sense of inadequacy, because you're not in competition with everyone anymore. You can make decisions more easily because you trust yourself and you understand that there's rarely one perfect right answer, just different choices with different trade-offs. You can procrastinate less because you're not paralyzed by the fear of imperfection. You can be creative again, really creative, the kind of creativity that comes from play and experimentation rather than the kind that comes from trying to impress people. And maybe most importantly, you can be truly intimate with people. You can show them your whole self, the impressive parts and the messy parts, the strengths and the vulnerabilities, and you can trust that you'll still be loved. Because you've learned something that the wounded child in you never learned. That love doesn't have to be earned, that your worth isn't conditional, that you are enough. Now I want to address something that might be coming up for some of you as you listen to this. You might be thinking, but my perfectionism has helped me. It's made me successful. If I let go of it, won't I just become lazy or mediocre or lose my edge? And I get it, I really do. Perfectionism has probably gotten you pretty far in life by conventional measures. But I want you to consider what it costs you. Your peace of mind, your mental health, your relationships, your joy, your sense of self. Was it worth it? And here's the thing. Healing your perfectionism doesn't mean becoming someone who doesn't care or doesn't try. It means becoming someone who cares about the right things for the right reasons. It means striving for excellence in areas that genuinely matter to you, not because you're trying to prove your worth, but because you're expressing your values and your interests. It means working hard when it's aligned with your authentic goals, but also being able to rest, to play, to be imperfect, to be human. Some of the most successful and creative people in the world are not perfectionists. They're people who try things, fail, learn, iterate, and keep going without getting stuck in shame spirals about not being perfect. They're people who can take risks because they're not terrified of failure. They're people who collaborate well because they don't need to control everything. They're people who innovate because they're willing to be messy and experimental. So no, letting go of perfectionism won't make you lazy or unsuccessful. It will make you more resilient, more creative, more connected, more alive. It will make you someone successful and happy, not successful and miserable. I also want to talk about the intergenerational aspect of this, because if you're a perfectionist who came from a childhood wound, there's a good chance you might pass this on to your own children if you have them, or to other young people in your life. Not because you want to, not because you're a bad parent or mentor, but because we tend to recreate what we know unless we actively work to change it. If you're a perfectionist, you might find yourself having impossibly high standards for your kids. You might find yourself criticizing when you meant to encourage. You might find yourself unable to celebrate their B's because you're focused on how they could have gotten A's. You might find yourself comparing them to other kids or to who you were at their age. You might find yourself getting anxious when they fail or make mistakes, and they pick up on that anxiety and internalize it. Or maybe you do the opposite. Maybe you're so aware of your own perfectionism and how much it's hurt you that you go too far in the other direction. You praise everything indiscriminately. You never give any constructive feedback. You don't hold any standards at all because you don't want them to feel the pressure you felt. But kids actually need some structure, some expectations, some guidance. The key is balance, and balance is really hard when you're working from your own wound. This is why healing your own perfectionism is so important, not just for you, but for the next generation. When you heal your wound, when you learn to accept your own imperfection and separate your worth from your performance, you can offer that to the children in your life. You can give them what you didn't get: unconditional acceptance, permission to fail, and the message that they are enough just as they are. You can celebrate their effort and their growth, not just their achievement. You can comfort them when they fail instead of being disappointed. You can model healthy striving, where you work toward goals that matter to you, but also rest, play, make mistakes, and treat yourself with compassion when things don't go perfectly. You can break the cycle. So before we wrap up here, I want you to think about something. What would your life look like if you weren't trying to be perfect? What would you do differently? How would you spend your time? What risks would you take? What would you create? Who would you connect with? What would you let yourself enjoy without worrying about whether you're doing it right? And here's an even bigger question. Who would you be if you believed, really believed, that you were already enough? Not that you'll be enough once you achieve this goal or fix this flaw or reach this standard, but that you are enough right now, today, with all your imperfections and mistakes and unfinished projects and messy humanity. Who would you be if you believed that? I'm asking because I want you to know that it's possible. That version of you, the one who's free from the constant anxiety and shame and striving of perfectionism, that version exists. And you can become them, not through being more perfect, but through being more human, through treating yourself with the compassion and acceptance you deserved all along. The childhood wound that created your perfectionism wasn't your fault. You were just a kid trying to get your needs met in the environment you were in. You developed perfectionism as a survival strategy, and it made sense at the time. But you're not that child anymore. You're an adult now with choices and agency and the ability to reparent yourself, to give yourself what you didn't get back then. And yeah, it's going to be hard. Healing always is. You're going to have to feel uncomfortable feelings. You're going to have to challenge beliefs you've held your entire life. You're going to have to practice being imperfect and sit with the anxiety that brings up. You're going to have to grieve. You're going to have setbacks where you fall back into old perfectionistic patterns and have to remind yourself to be compassionate instead of critical. But it's worth it. I promise you it's worth it. On the other side of this healing is a life where you can breathe, where you can be present, where you can connect authentically, where you can create and play and rest without guilt. A life where you're not constantly running from shame and inadequacy. A life where you know, deep in your bones, that you are worthy of love and belonging just as you are. So here's what I want to know from you. What's one area of your life where perfectionism is really holding you back right now? And what's one small imperfect action you could take this week to start challenging it? Drop it in the comments below. Let's support each other in this. Because healing perfectionism is hard to do alone, and there's something powerful about sharing our struggles and our progress with people who understand. And listen, I know this video was long, but this topic deserves depth. If it resonated with you, if you recognize yourself in any of this, do me a favor. Hit that like button so more people who need to hear this can find it. And subscribe to this channel because we're going to keep having these real, deep conversations about psychology and healing and becoming who we're really meant to be. Not perfect people, but whole people. Human people. Enough people. You are enough. You always were. And you're going to be okay.